Hello, welcome to another episode of Bull Prospecting. So what we have today is we've got some trimmed RAM cards. And you can see these are the DDR, I got some DDR2s and some DDR3s. And in my experience, these always have a higher concentration of gold because there's no legs and there's tiny gold bond wires in each one of these chips. So I got roughly 7 pounds or so of this. So now what I got to do is basically take all these off. I'm not sure how I'm going to do that. I might do that with my little chipping hammer, or I might just throw them in the tumbler with some heat and have them just fall off that way. But that's what I got to do, is basically get all these little guys off of here so we can get to the next step in processing. So let's do it. Okay guys, so now it's time to depopulate these, and what I do here is, depending on the situation, it's kind of chilly outside and I don't want to be outside. So what I've done is I just cut a little groove here in a 2x4. You can see I've just set my blade a little short. So I have a little tiny groove here, right, to kind of set that in there. And now what I'm going to do is put that up against a solid edge like that so it can't go any further. And then I just lay my chip in there, and then I take my flat blade and I just come down here and just knock these all off. So I'm going to go ahead and start processing these, taking these chips off, and we'll get to the next step. Okay guys, so we got 578 grams. I don't know if you can see that. Try to get it as best I can. It's kind of hard to see. There we go. 578 grams. That's 578 grams of that many RAM cards. So we got 578 grams of IC chips, which I do believe should be 1.5 gram recovery. So let's get to processing. Hey guys, welcome back to another episode of Bull Prospecting. So you're probably saying, man, what's he got going on today? Well, what we're going to do is we're going to process 579 grams of DDR2, DDR3 RAM chips. And how we're going to do that is what we have here as like a little homemade incinerator. So now what the idea is, we're going to put the chips in here. We're going to put them on an open flame, get that flame super hot. And this is our top. This top is going to be put around this can like this. And then what happens is the gases, as they combust, they're going to come out this hole. And because there's fire surrounding it, the gases get combusted. So there's 100% incineration. So there's no, so it's clean, nice and clean, and you know, all that good stuff. So let's get to it. Okay guys, there's 579 grams in our sweet potato can. Now we're going to put our expansion chamber on top of here and fasten it down with a hose clip. So let's do that. And how you know when your chips are done is when you have no more flames coming out the top of your can. So it's like a cool little timer too. Show you like how I can get it going real good. See how we're burning up all that gas? Total incineration. We'll let this finish its deal, and we'll start the next step. Okay guys, it is the next day. This thing has probably been spinning for, I don't know, 12, 13, maybe 14 hours. It's been on there a long time. It's been on there a long time. So what we're going to do, we're going to take this out and see what our material looks like and start the next step. Okay, now for this next step, you're going to need some jet dry. This is called a surfactant. What this does is this helps all your gold particles fall to the bottom. Now the idea is we want to get rid of all the light stuff, so we're left with just heavy elements at the end. So let's go ahead and do that. So here's one of the tumbler cans. Now we want our material to be like real powdery consistency. What I do is I squeeze the container a little bit because it's got a little seal in there. There we go. Not too shabby. Looks pretty good. Looks real good, dude. All right, let's dump this out. So I didn't have any steel balls to put in there. So I just had some old chunks of iron, heavy iron pieces, and a couple heavy milled granite rocks that I had. So I figured, you know what, I'll toss them in there because the pyrolyzation, the incineration went very well. And everything, all the chips in, when you do your incineration, as long as you leave them on long enough, all your chips don't have to turn white. They just got to get that plastic oxidized so that it'll just crumble. And so that's basically what I used here. This was just an old bolt I found metal detecting one day. Big old heavy lunker. So I chucked him in there. And along with this big old rock. This rock actually contains gold, so it's a limestone quartz rock. I couldn't bring myself to crush it because it's so cool looking. Because I mean, it's worth more leaving it like it is than it is crushing it. There ain't that much gold in there. Tiny A few specks maybe. But it's important to really be thorough with this stuff because the gold is microns. So, you know, you might be just a little bit on that rock, but, you know, you could be leaving a ton of material, you know, left behind if you don't take the time to just clean off the balls or whatever it is you're using. This rock really absorbed a lot of carbon. All right, we got container number 2. And here is the one that had the chains in it. You always want to spray off these just because sometimes you can get some bond wires stuck in your threads. But I like using these a lot better than the other ones. I'm going to get some more of these at Harbor Freight. These actually work great. I see, or you know, even if you got some bigger ones, these though work great in the tumbler. And now, one thing you always want to check to see, which I didn't, which is a big, huge boo-boo, is make sure you don't have a hole in your bucket. Thank God we don't have a hole in our bucket. So now, we got to fill this up with some water. So once I've got all the material in there, basically now I just let the water run until it's clear. And then you're ready for the next step. So, just going to let this do its thing. And now the gold's not going to come up to the top of that bucket and float out, so that's good. So the only thing that's going to come up to the top is the heavy, the light stuff, which is the ash and things that aren't noble. So we're just going to let this thing sit and do its deal. And we'll come back when it's nice and clear. Okay, so I've rinsed out all the loose stuff, And then what I did with the material that was left over, I left in the beaker, and I added about 100 milliliters of hydrochloric and about 50 milliliters of nitric acid. And the idea is to put everything into solution so I can take it back out. So we got to let this run its course. Now, as you can see, the reaction stopped. The bubbles you see is just residual heat. Now what we're going to do is turn this off and let it cool down. Okay, heat's off. Okay, now let's cool. Just got to cool down, and our next step. And I've added roughly 3 heaping spoons, 3 big old spoonfuls of 200 milliliters, and then dissolved it in warm water. And that's the sodium metabisulfate. So 3 big spoonfuls and 200 milliliters of warm water to dissolve it. Okay guys, so I denoxed it. What I used urea from the regular just Ace Hardware. But the problem is when you use that, you get some other like stuff that's in the urea that's not urea. I don't know what it is, but it's a foreign substance which causes you to have to do another step. So you kind of see it here in my filters, some brown sediments and whatnot. So that's all just crap. So all the good stuff we want is in here. And now we have our sodium metabisulfate in solution. And now we're about to drop it like it's hot. So here we go. Let me stir it up. And we should start to see a color change. I've added the sodium metabisulfate. Now it's just a matter of letting it sit overnight. But we're going to check back on it in about an hour just so I can show you guys the progress. Hey guys, so I just want to let you know this is actually day 3. We had complications with precipitation. So what I did is I bought some urea, a bag of urea from the farm store, and I noticed it had these little like brown pellets in there. So the pearls, or what I call them, the little white things, is what I was supposed to use, but I ended up putting a bunch in there. I didn't use enough urea, so I didn't denox the acid enough to precipitate. So I used like 100 milliliters of the urea. I must have had too much nitric acid in there. So it did not denox. So when I went to go precipitate, nothing was happening. So I was waiting, nothing was happening. So last ditch effort, I started hitting it with baking soda. All right, baking soda. That was working, but it still wasn't breaking it down. So I'm like, okay, we got to do something. So then I put piss in it. Just regular old straight up piss, man. All right, I had 400 milliliters of piss. Put that in there, and yo, that actually worked. All right, I started seeing a real big difference, and it was actually working. But I did take a piece of copper, tested it, and it was still had some, active nitric. I'm like, what the heck? So that's what I do, is I usually take a little bit and I just take a little bit of the solution and I drip it on some copper, and if it leaves a burn mark in the copper, then I know there's still nitric, you know, active. So in the last ditch effort, I said, okay, you know what, we gotta pull out the big boy stuff. So I went to my lye. So I used probably half a cup of lye, and finally we've got precipitation, and we got a drop. Now we got some crazy stuff going on here. Now I don't know if you guys can see that blue, but check that out, man. That's cool as heck, right? Look at that. And then here's the precipitation. That's all happening. Probably hard to see. You can see the precipitation here. Now this was from 700 and something grams of IC chips. And then look at that blue. Now what I had done is just to try to help neutralize any nitric acid that may have been in there, I had this piece of copper that I just set in the top. And I'm wondering if maybe that copper is what's floating at the top and everything else is at the bottom. But I just thought that was really cool. And if you look at the top, looks like a pond. Like I should have a frog in there floating around. And that's like a solid film. I don't know what that film is, but I'm gonna do some experimenting because that shit looks cool. I don't know what it is. It looks like some type of copper sulfate that may have formed up. But look at it, it's actually like a solid. See how it formed that solid? Which is actually really cool. Because if that did do copper sulfate, that's a real cool way of getting copper sulfate real quick. And you know what, I should show you guys actually how you can make a battery cell out of your solutions. Yeah, I've figured out a way you could charge a cell phone by using some of your solution. That's for another video though. That's really cool. I have to show you guys how to do that. But look at that stuff, is wild, man. Yeah, so this is a fail. So the moral of the story is, when you're denoxing, you gotta make sure this is the only thing about gold recovery from electronics that's a pain in the ass, is when you're doing the denox, you gotta really make sure you're 100% denox before you go precipitating, or you're gonna have this menagerie you see here. So, you know, denox your solutions before you try to precipitate, or you're going to have a nightmare on your hands. But, you know, it was, you know, it's not all bad. You know, I did get to experience this really cool stuff. You know, this, you know, let me see if I can stir it. Let's see if I can move it around for you guys so you can see what it does. Oh, I broke the top layer. Oops. That's so crazy. Look how defined that layer is. Yeah, and this stuff here stuck to the side too. Yeah, it's gold sediment. I started seeing I went to look at my beaker and I seen I had a sheet of gold going around the outside of my beaker, like the gold was starting to precipitate out onto the glass. And I'm like, come on. So I had to scrape a lot of that off. But now it's a waiting game, guys. We just gotta wait it out now and let this settle down so we can get to the next step. I have to bring my gold to a slow simmer. Okay, guys, we're on day 5. All right, this was a big old fail. All right, I tried to, denoxing, and your amount of nitric plays a huge factor when you're doing this stuff. So you got to use very minimum amount of nitric, and when you're denoxing, I'm actually going to show you in this video here how I grind up the urea pearls first, so that it helps denox the solution a lot better. And I'm actually going to dissolve the urea in the future to denox the acid. But what I did in a last ditch effort, and I found that it worked really good and was really effective, is I used caustic soda. And that worked, like it denoxed it quick. But I think what also helped was, before I put any caustic soda in there, is I put that zinc strip, which was probably 6 inches long by 1.5 inches wide in a cone. It had a bunch of fine gold particles stuck to it. When I dropped that in, it started dissolving, which led me to believe there was still nitric acid present. I left that out there for an hour, and I went back, and there was a little bit of zinc still floating in there. I pulled it out, and then so I just figured, okay, if that little zinc ain't dissolving, then all the nitric acid's toast. Stirred it, was waiting for stuff to drop out. 5-6 hours, I didn't see any drop at all, not even like that little tiny window you see at the top. So I said, okay, I went right to lye, put the lye in, and then finally I got it to. Okay, guys, that's the finished product right there. And if I had to guess, I'd say we're probably running at like 10 carat, maybe 7. But I had screwed up on that last batch, which was a pain in the butt to try to get this back out of. Well, let's go ahead, put this on the scale, and see what it come out to be. Okay, now let's just see how much this weighs. Here it is again. As I said, I guess probably make maybe 7K. It needs to be refined. Not bad. Not bad. 3.47. That is not bad. It was a nightmare to try to get this gold out of there. Like I said, it was the denoxing process, and because I didn't get that process right, I ended up getting silver involved, which lowered the carat. So I'm probably 7K right now. But I'm going to go ahead. I got another batch ready, which I'm going to add to this. And then once I get a good amount, I'm going to refine the whole thing to try to purify it. So that concludes this video. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and we'll see you on the next one.